You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Alongside Mike Chappell and Matt Adams, I'm Dave Griffiths, and your Indianapolis Colts are in the playoffs if the season were to end today. That's right. The 7 seed in the AFC with a 3-3 record. Going to take on the number 2 seed, whoever that is. I can't remember who is at the top, but nevertheless, your Colts.
Probably Houston.
Probably up there. Well, there you go. Well, they're going to face them in a couple weeks as it sits right now. But this week it is the Miami Dolphins on tap. We will break that down, of course, plenty. Also talk about last week's win over the Tennessee Titans, and also the injury bug continuing to bite the Colts in a significant way. But exactly how significant this week when it comes to the most important players, that I'm sure we will find out by the end of this week. But some early breadcrumbs early on this week that we can perhaps decipher, Chap.
And our esteemed outline guy, he didn't include that Sonny Dallas Clark goes in the Ring of Honor.
Ring of Honor for DC.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, Number 44, yes. Yep. Shared by Zaire Franklin right now, and we spoke to him in the locker room yesterday about that. He said he's met Dallas, and he even said, hey, when that number goes up, I can take it off. And Dallas said, no, it's yours now, too. So so that was just a sign of respect between them. And for those of you who don't know, like I know we make fun of me mentioning Syracuse in every show, but 44 is a very significant number for Syracuse University as well, and that's why Zaire took it on when he went to when he became a member of the Colts. It was number 1 by Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, Floyd Little, a triumvirate, and plenty more running backs after that specifically that were instrumental.
Syracuse never retired the number.
Yeah, it is technically like now up in the rafters there at the JMA Wireless Dome, which I will never get used to saying. It is the Carrier Dome. It always will be the Carrier Dome, but it is up there, but you can still have like special dispensation from the Pope, I guess, to get it if the occasion calls for it.
Well, you better be good to wear that number.
Yeah, I know exactly.
You can't be a special teamer.
No, they had a kid the other year, Sean Tucker, who like people wanted to get him that number, and the school just didn't give it to him. He was a really good player, and then just last week he was the starting running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because their main guy, Rashad White, was injured. Tucker goes off for like 120 yards rushing, touchdown, has a touchdown receiving, I think he was the top fantasy running back actually in the league last year. Anyway, this is not a Syracuse football podcast, and I promise I'll try to
as much as you try to make it.
I know, I do. I'll try to reel it back in over the next hour or so.
We like Dave enough
to
let him do that on occasion.
Right,
so.
Yeah, but not too much. But let's break down last week because that'll kind of lead into where we are this week. First with the Colts, a 20-17 road win against Tennessee. No one would call this a pretty game by any stretch of the imagination. The offense was not electric, but it did enough. The defense was far better than it was 2 weeks ago, for sure, but still had problems like cannot get to the quarterback over the last few weeks.
And third and 19.
The third and 19
the third and 19 run up the gut for a touchdown.
He was probably touched, wasn't he?
He might have been touched. Yeah. I'm not sure, but it was still one of the worst third down defenses that you will ever see from an NFL defense, or an NFL caliber defense. So
they gave up a 3rd and 17 or 18 against Houston.
They did.
When Stroud got different.
Yes.
But because this was one where they were getting in position for a field goal. That's all they were doing.
Yep. Just trying to run the ball, get it in the right spot. And,
try not to turn it over.
Yep, we'll bring out our field goal kicker, and nope.
We're just
straight
going
up the
down.
Gut, in for a touchdown.
Have your touchdown instead.
I would say this, Chap. Are you more encouraged by the defense allowing just 17 points, kind of reeling it back in a little bit, or were those pots here and there? Like I said, no sacks again for the second straight week, giving up some of those big third downs against, albeit a not great Tennessee Titans offense. Are you more encouraged, or are you kind of more still on the fence, or still kind of where you were in the past about thinking what this Colts defense is?
Well, I'm encouraged. If you're going to play a offensively challenged team, then I don't say dominate, but do your job. And again, they gave up 17, but Flacco gave them 7 with a bad interception in a short field. So I thought they played well. The fourth quarter, they were as good as you need to be. Was it three and outs and interception?
Yes.
Was that Blackman's interception?
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's what you want. And again, no matter how bad a defense plays, what you do in the fourth quarter, had they made a stop in Jacksonville in the fourth quarter,
right?
Your streak would have ended.
Hey.
Might have ended. They could have got to overtime.
Right.
So encouraging. The problem is it's hard to really get a gauge on this defense because Will Levis is not very good.
Mm-hmm.
I feel for Tennessee fans because that franchise is, unless this guy just emerges, that's going to be 3 years just shot, unless they decide at the end of the season to move on. So if you're going to play a team like that, maximize it. And then this week, Miami's situation is even worse at quarterback. They've scored like 30 points in 3 weeks. So, but at least we saw something. The 3rd and 19 it's just inexcusable. So I think the way they're playing and who they're playing, they give you a chance to win. If like we said last week, if Levis goes out and has the Malik Willis type game, you've got problems. Mm-hmm. And if Miami gets their act together, with what they've got, they've still got skill players.
They do.
Wadley,
and they have a pretty smart coach too,
right?
In McDaniel.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right, but you can only smart so much when you don't have a quarterback.
Right.
I don't care if this is a Pro Bowl quarterback. Mm-hmm. Encouraged, but they need to be better this week against a worst offensive team.
Again, another thing that Zaire said in the locker room, hey, Tyler Huntley's a Pro Bowl quarterback. So, yeah.
So is Gardner Minshew.
Yes, he is. How about that?
He got his rear end benched.
Yes, goodbye to his season.
He can go sit on his $15 million.
And I would be happy to sit on $15 million.
I would too.
Can I sign up for that?
Where's the chair? I'll sit on it.
Mm-hmm. One other thing about the defense and the not getting a sack in 2 games, I asked Zaire about that, and I posted this to Twitter, his response, because I thought it was pretty insightful. Just like there's so much that goes into just a stat, and it's a talking point on a podcast in a scenario like this. Say, Jude, Colts defense doesn't have any sacks in the last 2 games. What's going on?
Last 9 quarters.
In 9 quarters, yeah, throw in an extra quarter in that Jacksonville game. But when it comes to the NFL, teams can scheme to try to get out the ball quicker. And when Trevor Lawrence was throwing the ball in Jacksonville, he was getting the ball out very quickly. And that was the case for a portion of the time, at least, last week in Tennessee.
Yeah,
so Zaire,
especially at the onset,
right?
Yeah.
So Zaire mentioned that off the gate. So the other teams have been doing that, have been trying to get the ball out quicker against them, because that's what's been working against the Colts defense, to be honest. So get the ball out to the playmakers and try to make them do something, like Brian Thomas running 85 yards down the field in Jacksonville, and they just never could get the ball to Calvin Ridley last week. And you can debate whether that's part Calvin Ridley's fault, part Will Levis's fault, maybe a little bit of both of them. Maybe a little bit more on one side than the other, or the Colts defense playing better. Exactly, all those things. So it's not just a cut and dry. The Colts defense for pass rush is terrible. They don't have a sack in the last 2 games. You could definitely say it needs to improve. Absolutely, but you have to take in these circumstances as well if you're trying to form a full-fledged cognizant opinion of this team. And also, the defensive line has been ravaged by injuries, more so than any other position on the team. So, can you be frustrated with the backups not getting sacked? Sure, but could it be understood that way? Yes, it can. And I'm not trying to carry the Colts' defense's water here. No, I'm really not. I'm just trying to get everyone listening to understand why this is happening.
They got occasional pressure as the game
went on. Quiddy had a couple good hits.
Right. So getting him back matters. It's just funny though. I mean, this is a bottom line league. It's pressures are important. Mm-hmm. Sacks are what you want. It's just kind of crazy that when the teams that talk about, well, we're getting pressure and we're doing this, they're the teams that have trouble getting sacks.
Right.
And I can remember back in the day with as effective as Freedy and Mathis were, they may have led the league in almost sacks. And there are times, and you can force that quarterback to get rid of it a nanosecond quicker, and it's a bad throw. You can tip a ball. So, but again, 9 quarters without a sack, you can't keep that up. And as we said, this week you've got another challenge quarterback, and then as we've talked about, then things get rough.
Yeah,
the schedule turns, and you've got to find a way to steal a couple of wins in that. Was it a 5-game stretch? Which again, I go back to, if they could have found a way to win in Jacksonville, and then you beat a bad Tennessee team, then you beat a worse Miami team, you're in pretty good shape.
Right.
You can't have slippages this week.
No, and this is a game where you are in danger of getting behind the chains. If you are, to use a football analogy, if you're behind the chains and in the future you're facing Houston and Minnesota's coming and the Lions are coming and you're facing all these other elite quarterbacks coming up and teams that are playing really well this year, then you're in a lot of trouble. It's a 2nd and 17
Buffalo
scenario.
And the
Buffalo, the Jets too. Jets are not playing great right now, but they still have a pretty darn good quarterback back there,
They just added a pretty good receiver.
They did, absolutely. So
as did Buffalo.
Buffalo. Yeah, exactly. Both of those teams.
Both teams.
Yep. So So yeah, to put it like I said, in a drive scenario, if you lose this game, you get bumped back to 2nd and 17, and then it's really hard to get back on schedule there and to catch up when things are against you. So take care of this. Take care of your 1st and 10. Get a good gain. Get the win against Miami and kind of set yourself up for that stretch, and then try to steal one of those games to then set yourself up for the home stretch, where maybe you can get a couple down there. That the home stretch of the season doesn't look quite as bad right now. When you're looking at it start to finish. What was I going to say? I was going to say something about not sustainable, because that's been our theme for the past 3 weeks. But it was kind of I remember. It was kind of a reference to the sacks thing. It was just like 0 sacks over 2 games is not sustainable over this next stretch of the season, where you're going to face some of the best quarterbacks.
As you mentioned. But, whether it's scheme on the offense or your personnel, but it is what it is.
You know what else is I don't think is sustainable, and it's something that kind of came up this week in the press conference with Shane Steichen and talking to Anthony Richardson. It's not playing Anthony Richardson when he's not 100%. Cannot be a sustainable plan for the long-term future of this franchise, because he's going to need to play. And we've said for 2 years now that Richardson just needs reps. And Chris Ballard has said he needs reps. And Jim Irsay has said he needs reps. And Shane Steichen has said he needs reps. So you can balance the future of the franchise, but it's funny because Shane Steichen brought up Phillip Rivers when he was talking about this the other day. And so after he finished his answer, I followed up. I said, Phillip Rivers, he played when he was hurt. Famously.
Played with
a torn ACL, for crying out loud. And so isn't Anthony going to have to play when he's not 100%? Because that's what Shane had said earlier in the day. He said, well, we're trying to get him back to 100% before we put him out there. Like why is 100% the benchmark? Players are not 100% in the NFL.
Said,
he didn't feel 100% after week 1.
From week 1, you're not 100%. No player is.
He told me in the locker room. So why the emphasis on getting him to 100% in this scenario? And again, I'm going to tell you what they say, what Shane Steichen says, what the Colts' perspective is, why they are doing this, and then why they let, for example, Michael Pittman Jr. play when earlier in the week he had his back injury and was playing anyway. Like, the Colts made the decision to sit Anthony Richardson. The Colts made the decision to let Michael Pittman Jr. play because he wanted to play. Both those players wanted to play last week. Only Michael Pittman Jr. played. Why did they hold back Anthony Richardson? A couple reasons from the mouth of Shane Steichen. One is that Richardson is a mobile quarterback, so he's different than Phillip Rivers in that sense. There are less ways that you can protect him in a live scenario. And again, I'm not arguing that this is completely the right way of thinking. I'm telling you what the Colts say, why this is happening. One is because he's a mobile quarterback. And number 2, Shane Steichen said it's only week 6. Right now. Those were the words that came out of his mouth when talking about getting Anthony back in the lineup. It's only week 6. You want him for the long haul. You want him for the long haul. I have the feeling, just based on what Shane said to us, that if this was a game, week 15, week 16, and you're in the thick of a wild card hunt or a division title hunt, that Anthony Richardson would have played at least last week when they decided to hold him out. They hold him out because it's only week 6. There's a long way to go in this season. They still feel like he can get a lot of reps this year, and so they're trying to get him back as close to 100% as possible. That is their way of thinking. That's what you would say their way of thinking is, right, Mike?
Yeah, and the way he practiced last week, limited on Wednesday, full on Thursday, and then limited. I just have to believe they left the Thursday practice and something wasn't where it needed to be. Again, with his hip injury, maybe it limited him from doing certain things as a runner, as a thrower, and there was a pain or whatever, and they thought, no, we're not going to push it. Although, like you said, if this was week 15 and you need the game, then maybe he plays. But that's the thing. It's a little, where it gets a little bit cloudy is you can play it less. Certainly, you're going to play it less than 100%. But if that injury keeps you from doing the things that you do at a decent enough level, you're not going to push it. I thought he was going to play last week. I have every optimism that he plays this week. I think he's going to be full all week.
Right.
But it's and we'll get into this. I see it. It's on our outline. It's Flacco or AR.
Right.
There shouldn't be a debate. There can't be a debate. But what's undeniable, and somebody wrote about today, it might have been James Boyd, who's really good, is this guy can't be your quarterback of the future until he's your quarterback of the present. That's, again, he's finished 4 of his 8 games. And, I did something today, and the times he's missed, and then Jonathan Taylor. Since his all-world season, he's missed 15 of 40 games. But with AR, he's never, with the quarterback he is, he's never going to be 100%. He's going to get hit, whether it's running in the pocket. It just can't be an injury that it keeps you from doing what you do. And he's got to play. He's just got to play.
And I would say, again, the Colts' point of view with Richardson and Flacco, although Flacco has come in and been just fine in the backup role, there is a contingent, probably a smaller contingent, but a louder contingent online, the very online, quote-unquote, contingent that Matt Adams loves, that he interacts with all the time as our manager of digital content here at Fox 59 CBS 4. I think that's your title. If not, then you can correct me.
Close enough. Good.
Yeah. There's a very online segment, and probably some who listen to this podcast, because this is indeed a digital medium here, that think that Joe Flacco is the better option right now for the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts do not believe that.
I could argue that mildly, that he gives you a better chance to win. But the problem is while his floor is higher, his ceiling is lower.
Right.
So
they want to go with the higher ceiling.
Right.
Like the Colts and Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard have formed this team and this offense to be able to hit more big plays. And like Joe Flacco has been really good at hitting Josh Downs for a 8-yard gain on 2nd and 6. And that's what Anthony Richardson has not been consistently able to do. So I understand watching Joe Flacco and seeing everything that Anthony Richardson is not able to consistently do right now and say, he gives us a better opportunity to win. Well, look at what's happened the last 2 weeks. Like, the Colts did not really catch fire until late in the game, in the fourth quarter in Jacksonville.
Right.
Exactly. Before that, they had 2 drives that were scoring drives and about 5 or 6 that were 3 and out. That was it. And then last week against Tennessee, again, the first drive right down the field. By the way, credit to Shane Steichen for his game prep and that first scripting.
Man, they've had some really great first drives.
The past 2 weeks have been fantastic in the first drives. And after that, it fizzles.
Right.
It completely fizzles. It's 3 and out. It's 3 and out. It's maybe a first down, but then it's 4 and out or whatever it is. Like, look at the drive charts. Joe Flacco has been fine in relief. He has not been a world beater. And I don't know where that idea is coming from. It's probably just coming, like I said, from seeing that he is doing what Richardson can't do and being like, hey, we like that. That's great. You can move the chains every once in a while. You can hit Josh Downs here and there. And Richardson, we've seen him airmail those passes. So it's frustrating, so it's great to see. Like, he can do that. And I don't think that's the right way to view this quarterback, quote-unquote, battle. It's not a battle. I don't view that as the way to view this quarterback situation, because the situation is, this is Anthony Richardson's team. And the Colts need him in there in order to get the reps, to see the scenarios, to go through the motions, to go through his progressions, to go back and watch the film, to learn and get better the next week, over and over and over and over again. And that's the only way that he is going to get better. That's the way Josh Allen got better in Buffalo. Like, he was not good at these short passes or intermediate game when he first took over as the starting quarterback in Buffalo. And then the past couple years, he's been one of the top performers, one of the top producers at quarterback in the NFL, running, passing, whatever have you. So he still has his insufficiencies. Anthony Richardson will always have some insufficiencies. If he's always a guy that misses high, that's going to be frustrating because, as Darius Butler always says, tips and overthrows, DB's got to have them. And it's much better to have a quarterback that misses low, even though I can say from my experience growing up watching Donovan McNabb in Philadelphia, seeing someone skip in a pass for the 3rd time of the day, aiming for Terrell Owens is not the best either, you know? So that's frustrating too. Like, it's going to be frustrating no matter what. So all that to say, the Colts see this as Anthony Richardson's team, period, infinity period. As soon as he is healthy, he's going to be back in, and there is absolutely no debate between him and Joe Flacco.
Flacco's
so
done.
Stop saying there is if you're out there.
Joe Flacco is here for a reason. He's whatever it is, $7 or $8 million insurance policy. And when you need it, he plays. And as we saw, no disparaging meant, but in Cleveland, the longer he played, the more the efficiency waned. And we haven't seen that yet because he's played, 2 games. But I just think that they've got, and again, I think you're right. Internally, there's no question. They're not saying, well, what do you think? Does Flacco give us a better chance? And one thing though, I will say that on the deep shots, he had Doolin open.
Yep,
for an
the
early touchdown in the end zone, and I think he had
him.
Pierce open too.
Mm-hmm.
So you hit those, and then, like he said, if all of a sudden instead of throwing for 189, you're throwing for 250. This is we've spoken like a lot of people have. This season, as you mentioned, is all about getting Richardson the necessary experience. And hey, if that means a wild card berth, super.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got to be. They cannot go into next year not knowing what they've got.
Right.
My bar right now is so low on Richardson. All I want to see is 4 or 5 games that you started and finished in a row. You can't be the future until you're out here every day. Mm-hmm. Almost all the quarterbacks who have the good seasons, the good careers, you're available. You play. I think he's always gonna he probably will always miss a game or 2 during the year because of his style. You're gonna get lit up. You're gonna turn an ankle.
Right.
Concussion maybe. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But you got to play. And this guy he's still the youngest quarterback in the league in terms of age and experience. So yeah, there should not be a debate. Again, I could argue lightly that Flacco can maybe win a game that Richardson won't because he'll take care of the ball, except for that one god-awful pass.
Right.
But generally he will. But you've got to see what this kid can do,
Mm-hmm.
and he gives you more of a chance to really go over the top with your offense.
And I go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, Flacco's made some very memorable, very nice 3rd and long passes where you're not confident that maybe you would get that out of Richardson. On the other hand, yeah, he only had the 1 interception last week, but he threw a couple balls in danger last week that were fortunately called back for penalty. Mm-hmm. And then, I realize Jonathan Taylor's not back there, but the Colts' run game has just been running into the brick wall the last couple weeks. And we saw the difference in Zach Moss last year between, and Zach Moss still had some good games when Richardson wasn't in there, but efficiency-wise, much, much better with Richardson there because you have that. It just changes the defensive philosophy. So you gain some things with Joe Flacco, probably the intermediate stuff, a 3rd and 5, you get a 7-yard pass, that sort of thing that you might not get from Richardson. But then you're also missing some stuff as well.
Yeah, and if the Colts, when they get Jonathan Taylor back, again, they want to be a run the football first team. Even though, as Shane Steichen says, throw to score, run to win. I would argue last week it was throw to score, punt to win.
Absolutely.
Because Rigo Sanchez
Rigo was amazing.
Just drops it inside the 3-yard line there with 12 seconds left. So wherever he'd put, even if it was in the end zone with 12 seconds left, I mean, that would have been hard to drive from the 20-yard line to the opposite 35 or so. But if he put it at the 3,
drops the hammer, man.
Exactly. And just such an impressive punt when the game is on the line. Ashton Doolin was right there to down it if he needed to, but he didn't need to because it rolled right out of bounds.
It just died.
It was
amazing.
Beautiful,
it reminded me
kick.
of a Colts loss in San Diego mid-2000s with Cyphers. Mike Cyphers, I think it was.
Oh, gosh, that guy was on fire all game.
He dropped like 3 or 4 inside the 5. And you sort of slip off these punters, but I tell you, Rigo's having a Pro Bowl season. Mm-hmm. He's had 2 touchbacks this year, which is totally out of character. He had 0 last year?
I think so.
It's
yes.
unbelievable. That's a talent because the ball takes squirrely bounces, but cool to see. And again, when you force a team, they weren't going to score. What was it? 12 seconds to play?
Right. 12 seconds left.
Seconds.
You know,
Yep.
And no timeouts.
Unless he shanks one and it goes out of the 40.
Right.
But that made any kind of a comeback impossible.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Rigo, an ultimate team guy, too. He talked to him the other day in the locker room after winning AFC Special Teams Player of the Week and was all about team. Can't get this without the guys. Ashton Doolin is amazing, which he is as a gunner. If you are ever at a game, I know the TV broadcasts don't really let you see it, but if you're ever at a game at Lucas Oil Stadium or elsewhere, and you're watching a punt, like just watch Ashton Doolin work on the outside and right past his man every stinking
Gunner,
time.
it's got to be the most thankless job.
Yep.
But they turn fetal position.
Yep.
And they've always had really elite gunners. What was George Odom a gunner?
George Odom was there.
Pascal.
Zach Pascal was a gunner. Yeah. They had a DB, like a cornerback too, and I can't remember his darn name.
But that you can make a short career. Maybe George Odom's still playing.
He is. He's in San Francisco still.
He's a backup safety.
Matthew
He's playing
Slater made a career out of it.
Yes, he did.
Right.
For the Pats.
So I believe they just re-upped Rigo this past season.
Yep.
2 or 3 years. So that's it. It's a position that if you do it well, Luke Rhodes, for crying out loud.
Luke.
If you can long snap, you can play in this league a long time.
Excuse me, gosh. I'm having a coughing fit today. I apologize to both you guys and everybody at home. I promise I'm not sick. At least I don't think I am. Well, we'll determine that tomorrow. I guess tomorrow morning when I wake up.
While we had a break because you were coughing up a lung. From our guys covering practice, no Jonathan Taylor.
Right.
We talked to him today. We'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that soon. Yeah.
No Buck. Of course, he's
right.
They haven't
Activated, opened his window.
Yeah, haven't opened his window.
But guys that are back: Josh Downs, Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly, Dio, EJ Speed, Michael Pittman, Trey Sermon.
There was a lot of guys that were injured yesterday.
It was like 10 guys.
Yeah, it
on
was
the
bad.
The only one that was full was the quarterback.
Was Richardson, yeah.
And Richardson's back out there, so it looks a lot better. I don't know where you are on the list. We can talk about Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I'd say let's get into that
ahead.
now.
We talked to him today, and first thing he says, I'm super excited, getting close, super excited to get back out there with my guys. And then the longer he talked, you thought, this guy's not ready to play. Because he's talking about there's still pain. And it's funny because he said, well, the first time they told me it was a high ankle sprain, that's normally 4 to 6 weeks. You go back and in what was put out there by somebody who had the information, it was a mild high ankle sprain, if there is such a thing. Can you have a mild high ankle sprain?
I don't believe you can.
It's like I've got a mild ACL tear. No, So that's why there was always guys kept asking in press conferences, is IR a possibility? Which we're getting. If he doesn't play this week, this will be 3.
Right.
And like I said, since his 2021 breakout season where he was all world, he's missed 15 games. Yes, for the first 4 last year, you can call it whatever you want. They kept saying it was rehab and it was contract. So, but he's
rehabbing the contract.
Sprained contract.
Yes,
right. But that right ankle has bothered him. He had the thumb surgery last year, but this offense, as much as it needs Richardson, and it does, Taylor's the one that's going to make it go because again, the run game is with him. It was 130 yards a game, and without him, it's 89, and that's just unsustainable.
It was rough last week. I mean, every time they would hand the ball off to Trey Sermon, he already had somebody at his ankles.
Yep.
Like as soon as he got the ball last week,
Yeah.
because there is no threat of anything else happening on that play.
And I don't really blame Trey. Like I don't want to give that impression because, like you said, Matt, it really seemed like someone was in the backfield every time, and like Taylor can
it's
maybe
because you can just key on it. It's not. It doesn't really have. I mean,
Joe Flacco offers nothing, no threat.
Yeah.
Right. Goodson was able to crack one. But and you occasionally do. But even when he cracked that one big run, the rest of the time, Goodson's runs were very similar to Sermon's.
Yeah. Let's look at the Dolphins injury report. By the way, because they're not completely healthy themselves. Safety Javon Holland limited in practice with a hand. Other players that were limited include Mohamed Kamara with an ankle, David Long, another linebacker knee injury, defensive end Emmanuel Ogba, biceps injury, safety Jordan Poyer over there from the Bills, who's where his previous stop was, with a hamstring. Couple players full participation: Cam Smith, Skylar Thompson, Devin Achane, Their running back there with a concussion was a full participant in practice. Teron Armstead, their all-world tackle, and defensive tackle Calais Campbell.
He's still playing.
Still.
Wow.
Had a couple of those games in Jacksonville, if you remember that name. That's where it's from the Jaguars. Before that, he was with the Cardinals, I believe. Were both held out for rest on Wednesday. But those names are not even the most significant names that the Dolphins are missing this week as the Colts get set to face them. If you're in Central Indiana, game broadcast on Fox 59, 1 p.m. on Sunday afternoon, which you can watch our Colts Blue Zone pregame show where it always is. That's over on CBS 4 at 11:30 a.m. Big week for Fox 59, by the way. We have Purdue on Friday night, Purdue, Oregon. That might be a tough watch for Boilermaker fans, but we will see. And then we have Indiana on Saturday afternoon, big noon kickoff. Taking on Nebraska. Two teams playing probably the toughest competition they have faced so far. And two teams that have their eyes set on some relatively big things this year in the Big Ten. And then Colts against the Dolphins on Sunday afternoon. But anyway, the Dolphins have also been hurt rather hard with injuries. On injured reserve, quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is obviously the headliner, which is why Tyler Huntley's in there at starter. But also linebacker Jalen Phillips, who is one of their pass rushers, and also Bradley Chubb with a torn ACL has been on PUP. It is not expected to return for this week's game either. So their two outside pass rushers out, their star quarterback out, also on IR, cornerback Cam Smith, wide receiver Grant Dubois, safety Patrick McMorris, wide receiver River. Is that really his name?
I would say Craycraft.
Craycraft?
But I don't.
Yeah,
I don't know. I should have looked that one up.
That's
but also,
okay.
Cam Smith had been on IR.
Yeah.
Apparently, his practice window must have opened this week.
Okay, there you go. So there's one practice window.
He was
open.
listed as a full participant.
Okay,
it's hard. It's hard to get into the weeds sometimes with the other teams. You're just not as familiar with how things are going there.
Thank you, but yes. So they're a team that. Chap had some relatively big expectations early this year, but losing Tua and then their top two linebackers, I think that Jalen Phillips was more recent. Like Bradley Chubb has been out for much longer.
He was hurt last year,
exactly.
Just kind of waiting for him to get back into form.
But then, just as he's trying to get back into form, they lose their other guy in Phillips. So they've been hit by some of the most important positions out there on the field, and that's kind of set them back a little bit. They are just 2-3, coming off a bye themselves, just like Tennessee was last week. Right. That can't be easy to face two teams in a row coming off a bye, but nevertheless, it's a team that's still kind of struggling to live up to their preseason expectations this year.
I got irritated. I think it was on Monday. Is one of the national guys, one of the guys that I'm not crazy about.
I know who you're talking about, but continue.
He mentioned that McDaniel said that Tua won't play this week. Well, Tua can't play this week.
Right.
I mean, there is a difference in those two words.
Won't and can't.
He's not eligible until October 27th or whatever it is. It's just irritating because he can't. He can't play. McDaniel couldn't come out and say, yeah, he's ready to play.
Right.
No, he can't. So, but this just shows you again, as everyone knows, because they're down to their third quarterback. Was Huntley on the team?
No, he was on the Ravens
Thompson
practice.
Went down? That's what I thought.
Yeah, he was on the Ravens practice squad.
Right.
They signed him from there.
So it just shows you, and they gave Tua an extension too.
Yes, they did.
He is not to be too crass. He's one play away from really having career decisions to make. And
I feel like he's already there.
Right, some would argue that.
I know,
for sure.
I agree.
But
he's, they say, well, he looks fine. He's okay, but anyone who's into concussions, the medical people, the more you have, the more likely you are to have another one.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see, but that's their issue, and it's like I say, this defense has a chance to keep things tight and not let these guys get out there with their run game. I'd half expect them to play the Wildcat like Miami's done in the past with their running backs.
Famously. Ronnie Brown coming out against the Patriots. I remember the first game, that was the thing. And oh my goodness, what a week that was. Like breaking down on every show, on SportsCenter, on Around the Horn, PTI, NFL Countdown. Everyone was talking about the Wildcat after that.
I still remember one of the games the Colts played there in the 2000s with Peyton. And they had the ball for 14 minutes. The Colts did 14 minutes, 38 plays, because Miami ran that Wildcat.
And they just ran it.
And they ran it, and they had 10 plays, 12 plays. And then the Colts get it. It's 3 plays and a touchdown.
Right.
So, but Miami's going to try to – and they got a quarterback who can get out of the pocket and do damage. So this is a chance for the defense. Getting Quiddy back last week, and he'll have another game under his belt. I think Latu is close to having one of those games where you get after a guy, but this is a game you cannot let get away from you.
So yeah, they're like what I would expect from a guy like Mike McDaniel, who is a famously smart, offensive-minded guy, is to look at exactly what the Green Bay Packers did in Week 2 and try to do that.
Right. Because
that was an efficient offense with a very limited quarterback, and the Colts gave up those yards. I think the Colts would say their rush defense has gotten better since then, and it has certainly produced better results since then overall. But they have also not faced the caliber of runners that Miami has. After A-Chain, there's Raheem Mostert, toot boiler up, who's had a tremendous career after his time at Purdue, is a vastly underused player, obviously, because of his success in the NFL. He's only averaging 3.6 yards per carry this year, but Jalen Wright has been a pleasant surprise. 29 carries, 139 yards for him, averaging 4.8 yards per carry. He has been by far their most productive running back this year. And I think teams have been able to kind of tee off on the running game just because Tyler Huntley has been very much not a threat to do anything at quarterback. He has how many touchdowns does he have throwing? Zero passing touchdowns, my man. Absolutely none. And 1 interception. Has 11 carries for 47 yards, a touchdown, averaging 5.5 yards per attempt, which is not great. You want it, again, to be about 7.5 or 8 is the number that...
Will Levis was 3.5 last week.
That's not so good either. Yeah, exactly. Not great. So this Dolphins offense has been nothing short of putrid, to be honest. They are dead last in the NFL in scoring. They're averaging 12 points per game. They haven't hit 20 yet this year. So that's the magic number. You hit 20 points, you should win this game, at least if history tells you anything. But like I said, you look at those numbers and you say, I think the Colts have a really good shot to win this game. But you look at a Dolphins team coming off a bye week, and they have a coach that has proven in the past to be a unique offensive mind.
And the Pro Bowl quarterback who's had another
Pro Bowl quarterback.
Another week in the system.
Exactly.
It's really big for me, to me anyway, that the Dolphins are coming off the bye with essentially having a brand new quarterback at the helm.
Right.
Yes, I agree. Completely agree. That's nothing but good for them. Right. And the Colts playing 2 teams in a row. I don't care who the 2 teams are in the NFL. Playing 2 teams in a row off a bye cannot be an easy thing. And they're teams that are more rested than you. There are teams that should be more prepared than you because their coaches have had more time to go over you than you have to go over them. So the Colts won the first one. They are a better team than the Tennessee Titans. There's no doubt about that right now. You would think they're a better team than the Miami Dolphins too, but are they that much better of a team that they could overcome the bye week and overcome playing teams off back-to-back bye weeks and being less healthy overall? That's the question that they're going to have to answer this weekend.
Well, it was also brought up in the locker room about, do you have to guard against a letdown because you're playing against a quarterback who hasn't really done much?
Right.
This team is not in the position to overlook anybody. It's not.
Yeah.
Defensively, the only reason they're not 32nd now is because Dallas or New Orleans got steamrolled. So
right.
But they're now 30. They're still giving up almost 400 yards a game.
I loved what you told me last week on our Colts Blue Zone pregame show when we did our interview, that you had heard some people saying, oh, you can't have a letdown in Tennessee. You can't overlook the Titans. And you said, based on what would they ever do that?
Right. Complacent over what?
Exactly.
They're
How
2
are you
and 3.
complacent? They're 2-3, and now they're 3-3. You're not even over 500 yet. But you're complacent because you're in the playoffs right now, right? They're the 7 seed in the AFC.
I think Steichen's a guy who doesn't put up with any of that in his meetings with. Nor should he. So I think he does. There's a lot. I don't think that any player in that locker room that says, "Man, we ought to really smoke these guys and all this." No, again, you haven't shown it. And the fact that you shut down Tennessee in the fourth quarter when they've got a bad quarterback, no, it's the old stack games for these guys that stack quarters and then halves. But again, this is a chance to do that.
Yeah, I mentioned they're 32nd in scoring. The Dolphins are. The Colts are 16th. They're averaging 23.
12 points a game.
How about that? 12 points the Dolphins are averaging per game. That is not a good number. And the Colts, like I said, are averaging 23.2.
You think that's like 4 field goals a game? I mean, are they getting 4 field goals a game?
They're getting a lot of field goals. I mean, I think they've only had 2 offensive touchdowns in each of their last 2 games.
That is just gross. They've only had 2 offensive touchdowns, as Matt notes here.
Oh, yeah.
How would you like to interview Tyreek Hill every week?
Bro,
in the locker room.
Oh man,
my goodness!
And like it's still like he's not doing anything, but he should still scare the heck out of you. You know, every team that plays him.
He catches a crossing pass, he's gone.
See ya. So teams have done well to limit him, but he's one play away. He's one missed assignment away.
Let's be clear. It's the quarterbacks that are limiting Tyreek Hill, not the defense.
That's right. They are 23rd in total offense. Colts are 13th in the NFL. 26th in passing yards. Colts are 15th. 18th in rushing yards. Colts are 17th. So they're both averaging about the same rushing yards, although the Dolphins are running it a whole lot more than the Colts are. Colts have been much more productive. Yes. Averaging 4.6 yards per carry. The Dolphins averaging just 3.9 yards per carry.
That was what Pittsburgh did.
It was.
They didn't get a lot of production, but they were going to run the doggone ball.
Yep.
And the Colts, to be fair, that production has, because they were up above 5 yards a carry, and they were at 5 yards a carry. Now we're at 4.6 because that running game without Richardson and obviously without Taylor has just not been what it was.
Right. Very much different. The Dolphins 17th in points allowed, averaging 22.6. Whenever you average giving up 10 more points per game, you're probably going to lose a lot of the time. Colts are 18th in the NFL in yards and points allowed per game. They're averaging 23 points given up. 31st in rushing yards. The Colts 155 yards per game, 4.6 yards per carry. So those numbers are still pretty high. Dolphins 18th in rushing yards allowed. They're averaging 120 yards per game, 4.7 yards per carry. So they're a team that you can run against too, just not as badly as the Colts have been run against themselves. Dolphins have not given up too many passing yards, only 3rd in the NFL in yards allowed per game. They're giving up 160 basically passing yards per game because defenses have found more room running the ball against them. Colts are 26th in the NFL in passing yards allowed per game. They're still up at 234. That number came down a little bit after last week, holding Will Levis to 3.3 yards per attempt.
95 yards.
But yeah, 95.
In today's NFL with a healthy quarterback.
Yeah, man. Like Will Levis is... I know we touched on this earlier. I didn't say, but he came out gangbusters. He threw for like 4 touchdowns his first appearance out there, and then
last year
has just not matched it since. So he came out and gave you immediately what you wanted to see. God, there comes the cough again. Like, he's been different than Richardson. Richardson has showed you, I think, multiple flashes here and there. Levis showed you basically one flash, and then has been trying to get back to that and just hasn't been able to do it. Anyway, that's my...
that's their problem.
Yeah, exactly. That's thankfully their problem. Dolphins are 5th in yards allowed total, 285 yards allowed per game, so the defense playing pretty well. Colts are up to 30th in the NFL in yards allowed per game.
Still almost 400.
Moving on up. 300.
You couldn't go to 33rd.
No.
So you might as well move up.
There you go. 389.5 yards allowed per game. Mike McDaniel asked going against a Gus Bradley coach defense, saying, quote, "They are fervently vibrant on defense in Indianapolis."
The heck does that mean?
I have no idea, but it's Mike McDaniel, and he just always says something.
He does. Like we do a segment every week for our Big Game Bound, which is called
open mic star.
Exactly, an open mic. He and Mike Tomlin are both open mic stars. They always say something that's unique every week that we got to fit in there from around the league.
Fervently vibrant.
Fervently vibrant. The Dolphins are -2 in turnover ratio. They have only forced 4 turnovers in 5 games, 3 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery, and they've turned it over 6 times with 4 picks and 2 fumbles lost. The Colts are +1 in turnover ratio. They've forced 9 turnovers, 4 interceptions, 5 fumble recoveries. They've surrendered 8 turnovers with 7 interceptions and 1 fumble lost. Colts are still dead last in the NFL in time of possession at 32. That's going to take some time before they climb out of that cellar.
And they were pretty close to 50-50 last week,
Right.
which was a good sign in that game.
Dolphins are 10th in the NFL because they've been more of a running team than a passing team in time of possession themselves. Dolphins average nearly 9 penalties per game, 78 yards. That's the most in the NFL, and that's more than anything, I think, is what killed the Titans last week, killed any chance they had. Like, it was 11 penalties, 113 yards. yards, I think it was at the final whistle. But there were some crucial penalties here and there, some third down penalties that.
Well, there was a penalty that they didn't call on Jalen Jones.
And that, yes, yep.
Was that third down? And he
hooked
hooked top, I think it was.
100%.
I don't know if that pass was catchable, but it was close enough that it's still a penalty.
Do they call uncatchable anymore? I've seen some on
Every
TV.
once in a while they will, but it's rarer and rarer because it's kind of like, well, you don't really know because if you hadn't impeded the guy, maybe he could have gotten there.
Right. Like, are you going to bet on DeAndre Hopkins not getting the ball? You know,
if it's catchable.
He's not what he was 5 years ago, but I would still bet on him trying to get the ball.
They let Jalen Jones on a couple passes. That one specifically, though. But, hey, you know what? As a defensive back, sometimes you get away with it and sometimes you don't.
Yep. And
for the Titans, they did not get away with any of them.
Whoever the DB was on Alec Pierce, they got a 33-yard pass interference there, which is basically, I mean, Pierce didn't have a catch, but that's a 33-yard catch.
That's impact that we've talked about with Pierce before where – like at least this season we've seen him catch some balls, so for other people it's more visible on the stat line. But that is the impact that Pierce can even have when he is not catching the ball.
Right.
He was going to get free if that guy didn't try to grab his arm. He was going to catch that ball and probably go all the way down the sideline.
Yep, quite possible. So the Colts, by contrast, the Dolphins average the most penalties in the NFL. The Colts average the second fewest, only 5 penalties per game, 38 yards per game in those penalties. So one thing before we get into the odds and the predictions that I didn't mention earlier that I kind of glossed over briefly, but we definitely need to mention was the play of Michael Pittman Jr. last week, a player who we did mention that just in contrast with Anthony Richardson, he was allowed to play while Richardson wasn't. But Pittman came out with his bad back and all and put the team on his back, went up and caught a crucial touchdown from Joe Flacco on a jump ball, had a couple of major conversions before that as well. There is... you can continue to look around the NFL and find few players tougher than Michael Pittman Jr. And I know you don't always say that about wide receivers as a position, but coming from a guy whose father was a running back in the NFL and definitely instilled his characteristics in his son, Pittman embodies the toughness that you want to see in an NFL player.
When he doesn't play, there's an issue. There was one game last year. Yeah, it was concussion.
Yeah,
when he got blown up. It's. I text somebody within the Colts organization. I said, first two things. First, masterful stroke to get him signed when they did the extension. They saved themselves, I don't know, $3 or $4 or $5 million a year.
Total. Yeah, $15 million total.
No question.
That's what I'm saying.
They got him for 23, I think it was, and change. But on top of that is you wish there was another level to his game, more of a consistent deep threat. But this is a guy that you can win with. You can do all that you want to do with him as your number one. Now you need the guys. Mm-hmm. You need Pierce as a deep.
Pierce. You need Downs.
And you need Downs.
Yeah.
But doggone, he's missed just a couple of games since his rookie year. I think he had like a compartmental syndrome in his leg one.
Oh yeah, I forgot
which
about
was
that.
significant.
Yeah, it was significant.
But he plays. He just plays, and I thought it's with the way the Colts are, we get Spiro Ditas and Adam Archuleta. And Archuleta is getting pretty good. Mm-hmm. But before that play, he said before the touchdown, he said, the Colts really haven't targeted much.
He hasn't had much impact on the game.
That's what he said.
And boom.
Bam.
Boom. And then you mentioned the conversion. He had one catch and 2 or 3 targets up till then.
Right.
And then he had the monster third and whatever it was, to sort of put the game to let him take more time off the clock.
Right,
pretty much ice the game for him because you don't get the Rigo punt down with 12 seconds left if it doesn't make that catch.
And that was against. I think both catches were against Snead.
They were. Yep.
So
and Snead was all over him on that.
Wait, I thought Snead was coming to the Colts this offseason.
Still funny.
Still funny.
He missed the memo.
Still funny.
But that 16-yard catch, Snead was all over Pittman on that one. It was a tough grab. But I mean, that's what Pitt is, just a tough dude. He makes the tough catches, and he did it right there.
And this is after signing the $70 million extension. So if anybody has a reason to say, I feel pretty good, but my back is not quite right, it's a guy that just got financial security for his grandkids. Mm-hmm. So this is a special guy. I really like him. Part of that is he's such a good guy in the locker room.
One of the most enjoyable guys to interview.
He's always got something to say. And he makes an effort.
Yes.
And from the listeners don't care, but from a media standpoint, when you have a guy that just does it because he's supposed to be in there, and there's some guys in there like that, this guy has got things to say, but he's a good player. And again, I wish there was another level to. Everybody wants Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb. This guy is not that, but he's quality and he's just tough as nails.
And I certainly don't mind the other aspect to his personality, where last year after the I think it was after the Browns game that they lost, that he was upset. Like, he was like, well, they just didn't get the ball
Maybe
to
I'm
me.
not part of this
Maybe
offense.
I'm not part of the offense.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind a guy who's frustrated
but then
after
what
a loss.
did he do?
He had a big touchdown in that game, but he only had like 2 or 3 catches in that game.
But then he comes in on
and
Wednesday.
Then, exactly. And he mea culpa completely.
And we're
Calls
waiting
everyone
for
to
the
him.
quarterback and
Yes.
whoever the quarterback. And
Minshew.
which we were
Right.
we're ready to leave that, but he calls us over to say, my bad.
Right.
And that's
I
all you
spoke
want.
from an emotional,
Right.
I was upset. And
And that's why players, we won't get into the locker room situations, but we've got like a 10-minute cooling off period.
Right.
That's not a long time to cool down.
It is not.
After you've gone through what you've gone through and you're hot. But it's kind of like Joe Flacco said, honesty's not always what you get out of the locker room.
Right.
But again, Pittman, I thought the fact that he called everybody over and he had time to think about it. I don't think the team went to him. I don't think his wife said, honey, that was stupid. I think he realized that what he said wasn't taken out of context. It was what he said.
Yep.
But he understood that it was not quite the right thing to say.
So I hope to interview him for the next decade plus here, and just go to him every week, and we'll grow together, and we will continue to have good moments and maybe some testy moments, but I think it's going to be enjoyable. Yeah, at the end of the day, because he's an enjoyable guy to chat with, and he's a heck of a football player. And I think if you're a Colts fan, you should be absolutely thrilled that he is here and that he's your number one receiver right now.
And we talked about the fact that he signed a 3-year extension. He's going to get another bite at the apple in 2 years.
Yep, good for
or
him.
Whatever, and won't even be 30 yet.
That's the business of professional football. That's acing the business. That's taking the Kirk Cousins class of knowing the business behind football and using your situation to maximize your potential. Which
I think he's going to be the guy in a year or two where the fans or media, whatever, we need to get better at that spot, and you're going to realize that you're pretty good there. I've always kind of looked at it like Miles Turner.
Yeah.
Miles Turner. You want something a little more for that price, but doggone, he's pretty good.
It's similar to T.Y. too. I mean, T.Y. was the same way. There was a debate: is T.Y. number one receiver? Well, what he does is pretty freaking darn good.
I always had that argument: is a 1 would be better as a 1B. And you look up, and in a couple of years, T.Y. is going to be in the Ring of Honor.
Yeah, you can have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and they're both number one receivers.
Right.
Like, you could add another one. That's fine. I'm not saying that you can't add another receiver, but Pittman's right there. Like, he's not in the same breath across the NFL as the guys who have been to multiple Pro Bowls. Not yet, and he'll tell you that. Like, he's trying to get there.
He's probably 12, 13.
But he's ascending, and
Yes.
and I all that to say, like, I kind of glossed over that earlier in your rundown, Matt.
I'm glad we brought that back because
I
I
wanted to come back to it.
Just thinking about that guy with his back, having a sore back, and then going up and making the catch he did in the end zone. I mean, that was the key play for the Colts there in the second half of that game. And then you think you can't get any more from him there, and then he makes that 16-yard catch so that they can make the Titans burn their timeouts and kill the clock.
And we're going to go through with him probably for the rest of the year, where he's probably going to. He didn't practice yesterday.
Yep.
Practice today. Maybe he doesn't practice tomorrow. I don't care.
Just get him in there.
A.D. Mitchell needs to practice. Pierce maybe not, but the fact that he's out there, this is what is going to be maintenance. And he told reporters after the game that IR is still a possibility.
Right.
So I think in this case that if that back flares up to the point that it flares up and then doesn't ease. Then you think about that, but it was his decision to play. The team will have to do what they did with Richardson, like you said. No, give me your helmet. You're not going out there,
right?
Because he's going to play, and that's what you want from players. Everybody's hurt, and people don't understand what goes on behind the scenes. Sometimes you have to save a player from himself. Pitt's going to play, barring the old bone sticking out of the skin.
The Colts play the Dolphins in Week 7 of the NFL season. Their one home game over a 5-week span. broadcast at 1 p.m. Sunday on Fox 59 if you are in central Indiana. The Colts are 3-point favorites, according to Las Vegas. Over-under set at about 44. So they're expecting something along the lines of a 24-21, 23-20 ball game, Vegas is. And I think that's a fair assessment.
Vegas is pretty good.
There's a reason, as we keep on saying, that the ceilings are plated in gold there in Las Vegas.
And there's a lot of ceilings.
And they keep making more of them. Exactly. So I'm going to say that this is the first week that the Dolphins score 20 points this year, but I do think the Colts can score more than that. I'm going to pick 22-20 for my pick. Colts win.
I picked that last week.
Well, it was so good, it just stuck in my head, and I picked it right back out there, and then I decided to go with 22-20 again. They get to 4-3, and then very soon the challenges are coming. And because if you get behind here, I think it's going to be really tough getting through this next stretch of the season to be where you want to be before the home stretch, and then you're trying to charge late, and heck you can.
The home stretch is gettable.
Is gettable. The middle stretch, you have to get gottable, if that makes any sense.
Steal a couple.
Yeah.
And we'll see where that is.
And so that's where I feel right now. And I think at 3-3 is a reasonable place to think where the Colts would have been at the start of the year. Like, if you asked in the preseason, where do you think the Colts will be after 6 weeks? And you look down who they're playing, I think 3-3 is reasonable, and that's where they are right now. And, of course, if you asked me after this week, I would have said probably 3-4 because I would have assumed the Dolphins were better than they are right now.
Right, because you would assume, too, it was going to be in there at the beginning of the season.
And I would assume Jalen Phillips was still playing, and that they were just a much better team than they are, and contending in the AFC East, and they are not. So now this is a game that you should get if you're the Colts. You're at home. You're a 3-point favorite. This is a game you should win. I think they do, 22-20, and enter this middle portion of the season, the center portion of the season, at 4-3. You'll go next, Matt, and then Mike at the end.
I'm going to go ahead and go with the Colts here. This game has a lot of similarities to what they did with the Titans last week. Just because the Dolphins aren't terrible on defense, but their offense isn't great. They're not been generating a ton of turnovers. I'm going to say 27-20 with the Colts.
Chap.
It's funny, when I picked 22-20 last week, my son said, well, how'd you get to 22?
You don't never know.
And I couldn't do it because I'm sitting here now with 2 touchdowns and 3 field. No, I've got 24-13. I don't think Miami puts points on the board. Mm-hmm. I think this defense will play better. It's getting better, a little incrementally better.
Of course.
But I do think getting Richardson back makes a difference. Mm-hmm. Not having Taylor, which I don't think they will. But I just think this team is better. It's ascending a little bit, but this is a game like we've talked about. You can't have slippage. I just think Miami's not good enough offensively to do a whole lot. 24-13.
Mm-hmm. That's very reasonable because they haven't done it yet. And this might be the week they do. This might be the week that
might very well be the week that they do.
Keeps going in that same direction. And I think it really does remind me of that Pittsburgh game from a couple weeks ago. The Colts won. You know, it's a team that's struggling offensively. The Pittsburgh was getting some results though, just with a slightly more efficient play on offense. They weren't.
Pittsburgh's changing quarterbacks. It sounds like
they might be. Yeah,
that's stupid.
Yeah, they're 4-2 right now.
That's what I mean.
Right. Changing. Whatever. Yeah, whatever. We'll see what happens. But I hope you enjoyed this weekend's game. We'll be back next week with some more insight as the Colts get set for. I think it's the Houston Texans next week, and I'll be
Houston.
I'll be down in Houston for that game. So that'll be fun. And yeah, Colts Dolphins, Fox 59, 1 p.m. Sunday. We'll see you next week on the Colts Blue Zone Podcast.